Z71 off-road. You can't race no four-wheel drive. 4x4's for mudding. If you got you a four-wheel drive, you go up. If you want to go down, get you a two-wheel drive. Look right there, plain as day, it says off-road. Off-road. Hell, you can't race no two-wheel drive pickup. They're too light in the ass end. You gotta put you some lead in the back and get it squatting on down. Dang, man, how you get that two-wheel drive to hook up like that and pull them tires up? Seemed like they'd be too light back there, you know. When I used to race, I used to take PVC pipe, fill it up with water, so that way when I took off, the water would run to the back and it would, some bitch jump a Coke can in the rain. Dang, man, you got four-wheel drive? That's something a gun should like. Do like a .98 60 foot, all them tires and all that stuff working. Seems like four-wheel drive would kill a ton of power having all that stuff turning. That's crazy to me. Man, you got all them tires and you only 60 foot in the 1.5s? What? Oh man, I don't know. Track was junk. We couldn't get it to hook up. We couldn't do this. And I did go 130 60 foot, but then I went 9 180s, you know, kicking the tires. That's all I could do with it. But I got the 130. I got the 130. Alright guys, I'm digging Z71. My name is Dylan and welcome back. Today we're going to talk about a couple of things when it comes to racing trucks in general, and then specifically a four-wheel drive versus a two-wheel drive. There's one whole group of people that think you can't race a truck at all because there's not enough weight over the rear end of the truck to do it. Most of us know that that's completely false. Yes, rear percentage does help traction, but if you know anything about suspension, then it's covered. The second part of that is that when it comes to racing a four-wheel drive specifically versus a two-wheel drive, there's a lot of misconceptions. The first of which is that it seems like most people think a four-wheel drive truck is going to have some radical, crazy fast 60-foot time. They think just because they see four radials, four slicks, whatever on a truck, that it should just blast off like it's nobody's business. That's relatively true, but it's not completely true. The part that isn't completely true is that it doesn't have, the four-wheel drive really doesn't have a radical 60 foot when compared to a two-wheel drive. I'm going to have a lot of videos I'm going to throw in here to try to illustrate these things as we go along, but primarily the biggest benefit that comes from racing a four-wheel drive is the consistency that's involved. It'll do the same 60 foot here in the grass, there in the dusty road, there in the highway, or even out at the track. They'll do the same 60 foots across all of those surfaces. So when it comes to racing, consistency is a very, very important thing to have. Now the cost associated with that. So in any time in racing, there generally is a give and a take situation when it comes to getting down the racetrack. And in a four-wheel drive's case, you gain a lot of consistency in expense of a little bit of time. Almost all four-wheel drive trucks are going to have a little bit of a disadvantage in terms of 60 foot time as compared to a comparable two-wheel drive. So when you have a two-wheel drive that's very well done, it's going to be decently consistent and it's going to be pretty quick. You know, assuming that, like I said, that you have a well-done truck and that your tune-up's on point, etc. So basically what the four-wheel drive does, for those of us who are crazy enough to do it, is just open our margin of error up. So we can go out there and leave on astronomical amounts of power and at most chirp a tire, or we can just whack the pedal one time, pedal it, and get back going like nothing even happened. Whereas a two-wheel drive, if that happened to you guys, you know, you would immediately smoke the tires. You would have already lost your race. You would have done this, that, and the other. So, you know, your margin of error is much, much more narrow than it is for someone like myself with a four-wheel drive. But let's look at some videos from some guys that we have. So there's going to be a couple of my buddies. There's a couple of turbo trucks here, a blower truck, and I'm gonna show you, you know, that you can make, first you can make a two-wheel drive hook, right? So we talked about that in terms of 60 foot times, but in a direct middle finger to all the people, all the old school folks out there in their New Balances and high white socks that are like, probably their Bush Lattes are out there. You can't make no pickup truck hookup, ain't no weight over the back end. So a good two-wheel drive truck's going to be in the 140s and in the 130s, and they're four-wheel drive guys down there, but in general, most of us hang around in that high 1.4, mid 1.5, kind of 60-foot range, and even a little slower in some cases. But that's going to be where most of your four-wheel drive race trucks are going to sit at, sort of in that high 1.4, mid 1.5 type of range. There's not going to be many people out of that. Now, if you get into the two-wheel drive side of things with trucks, there's going to be a lot that can do it. There's going to be a lot that are going out there and busting 130s and 120s and or a really well done small tire S10 or something. You can be in the 1-teens. I mean, I'm sure that there's probably some no-time guys out there in the 1.0s even in trucks. But those are two-wheel drive. I mean, it's at some point the weight bias, the weight percentage, the total weight involved, the number of parts and pieces spinning is better and more advantageous to a two-wheel drive as opposed to a four. Now, I'm not making any of this up to sway anyone from wanting to race their four-wheel drive, because in my opinion, the sheer amount of fun that it is to do a four-wheel drive launch, the consistency that comes with it, the ability to do it on any given surface on any given time is worth it to me. Now, I sort of started in the four-wheel drive ballgame because that's the truck that I had. It was never meant to be sort of as quick as it is or as quick as it's headed to be. It just was like, oh, let me do a motor swap, and then let me throw a cam in it. Well, if I'm doing a cam, I might as well have a converter, and if I'm having a converter, I can sell the mud tires. And yeah, we talked about all this before, but basically it's just snowballed to the point that it is now, and it's my truck and I freaking like racing it. It's just all there is to it. For anyone that's wanting to race a truck, a traction bar is going to be basically mandatory in my opinion. So these things are going to make your life a ton easier. They do a couple of things. They do one, they stop axle wraps. So when you have leaf springs and you have a truck and you're launching it hard and things start moving around, your pinion is going to try to climb and it's going to make the axle try to flip up. It's going to get under there and do some crazy things. So the first thing that these things do is stop that. That's going to be a big improvement in traction immediately without any other changes. The second thing that it does is it actually can provide you with some adjustable amount of anti-squat, whether you want negative or positive. That's stuff that we talked about in the last video that I done. So, I talked about how changing the bar angle and doing things can make the truck either squat if you're on a bias ply, or try to drive the radial down into the concrete or asphalt if you're on a radial like I am. There's a lot of adjustment to be made in different brands, and there are advantages to every type of them that there are. You need some sort of traction bar, whether it be a Caltrac, a VAS Specialties, Assassin bars. There's numerous of them, and they all work pretty well. It's kind of 6 one way, half a dozen the other. Right there immediately, with a little bit of test and tune, can take away the whole your truck's too light in the ass end to do anything. So that eliminates that. Boom, myth busted. Circling back around to the four-wheel drive stuff. People like to say, oh, four-wheel drive robs too much power, it's too heavy, it's too this, it's too that. Well, that is one of the only things that they're halfway right on. So when they say that four-wheel drive stuff robs power, it's true, it does. Does it rob a significant amount? I don't think so. So you obviously have lots of things turning, and some of that stuff takes weight, and there's more moving pieces than in a two-wheel drive. People aren't losing 100 horse or 50 horse with it. So I've taken my truck to the track and I've done basically like 30 rolls. I get out to about the 60-foot marker and jam it and monitor my trap speeds. Well, dozens and dozens of passes in two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive, back and back and back. I only saw like maybe 1 to 2 mile an hour difference between the two. But what I did notice was an extreme inconsistency in the two-wheel drive passes on getting anything done, because half the time it would kick and spin the tires, which, disclaimer, my truck isn't set up for two-wheel drive launches or hits or rolls or any of that. So that's sort of where that inconsistency came from. But it just goes back to what I was talking about earlier about how two-wheel drives, they gain in like having less parasitic loss and having better 60 foots and having less overall weight, but give up the consistency side of the thing, and that's where four-wheel drive really picks it up. So the 1 to 2 mile an hour that I would lose in doing a four-wheel drive versus a two-wheel drive pass wasn't worth it to me in terms of the consistency that I lost. I would much rather pull up to the starting line, put the thing on the brake, and know that I can leave with all the beans that I have. So that way all the freedom that I have under the hood can sing when I let go of the button. So being able to comfortably know that the truck within, a small whack of the throttle or two is going to make a really, really good pass off the starting line is incredibly relieving. And I know with as much power as I've been trying to leave on and how much power I plan to add to it, with a two-wheel drive truck, it'd be very, very hard to do that with the same results that I've had. So basically, in about the last 10 passes or so, under some decent power, my 60-foot window has been between a 152 and a 157. And like the last 10 passes I've made, and all it's done is getting a little bit better as I've added power. And I really haven't even added much power. I've just been leaving on more RPM. I've started roundabout at the same amount of boost, and I just added 200 RPM, and it just keeps getting better. So we're gonna just keep heading that way until something starts not working for me. But so far, it's just working. With a two-wheel drive, that probably wouldn't be the case. There's no way that most two-wheel drives, depending on the setup, are going to be able to leave on 10 pounds of boost and 4,400 RPM like I have. It's just not what they do. Now the thing is they leave on less power and ramp it in more aggressively and are able to attack those 60 foots that we're talking about and get the better ones. Whereas I'm leaving on just about all the beans that I have, and my 60 foots are good, but they're not great. But they do it all the time. I can do it here, I can do it there, I can do it anywhere. That's really the big picture and the big difference between racing a two and a four-wheel drive. It's all in what you want, whether you want consistency, whether you want overall just straight up fastness and like sort of relying on really good track prep and a really good tune-up. Those two things make a pretty big difference in how well or how hard a two-wheel drive truck is able to leave starting line. Whereas me, go. It's all the same all the time. Alright, so back to why I started the video in the first place. Hopefully this sort of proves some people wrong in some common misconceptions about two-wheel drives and four-wheel drives. In a nutshell, it comes down to four-wheel drives don't 60 foot like crazy. They're not these 60-foot monsters like people like to think. They really just have a very, very wide margin of error to have a good 60 foot. Most two-wheel drive guys, you're going to out 60 foot us four-wheel drive guys all the time. But we just hope that the one time that you don't do it, when you kick the tires, there's one beside you. I always hope for a good race and everything, but it doesn't really hurt my feelings to go by somebody much faster than me when they're sitting there kicking the tires and spinning, and I'm just cruising along for my Sunday drive. But that is going to be it. My name is Diggin. Hopefully the next time we'll have this thing back together, got some parts put on it, and we can put it in the beams. But until then, we'll see you later.